There are many difficult challenges truck drivers face in the course of doing their job. Here are the top 10 on my list. Number 1, getting lost and getting unlost again. And this happens to everybody. No matter how good your GPS is, no matter how carefully you study the map and you get directions from shippers or receivers, every once in a while something's going to throw a curve at you. You can be following the route that you were given and there's road construction and they detour you. Or they've made a mistake on the directions or the street name and you hang a wrong turn and there you are in a residential section in a cul-de-sac. Not too terrifying in a car. In a truck with a 53-foot trailer, absolutely terrifying. You're looking for the nearest place you can turn around without doing any damage. And a lot of guys try to U-turn the truck. That usually doesn't work out very well on a city street. That's probably one of the most difficult things truck drivers face in the course of their career. Number 2, having to deal with difficult dispatchers. Now, dispatchers, sad to say, can make it or break it for a truck driver because they have a certain influence over the revenue stream. They can give you the good loads, they can give you the bad loads, they can give you the dangerous loads if they don't like you. They can develop a rapport that either works well with you or they decide they hate your guts. And and there's no calling it. Some dispatchers are really good, some dispatchers are really terrible, and most of them just don't care. It's important to develop a good rapport with your dispatcher. It's also important to find a dispatcher that's a good dispatcher and one that you can work with, because trying to work with a dispatcher that's a fool is an absolute nightmare and it can break you. Number 3 on my list is a real adjustment for drivers, and it's the loss of your home time. Truck driving, over-the-road truck driving, is not just a job, it's a lifestyle. And all sorts of guys have a lot of trouble adjusting that. But that's the simple truth. You're gone days at a time, sometimes weeks at a time. And not only do you have to adjust to this, so does your family, your kids, your wife. It's a terrible part of the job. And you're not really compensated anymore for that part of the job. We used to be. We used to make really good money. These days, that's not the case anymore. So it's an awfully hard adjustment considering the money that you're paid. And it's interesting that some of the most difficult issues about being a truck driver involve money. So there is something else that's difficult about being a truck driver, is the hours that you work versus the pay that you make. At the end of the day, when you look at your paycheck, when you've been putting in 70, 80, 90 hours a week, gone for a couple weeks at a time, and you look at your paycheck and it doesn't come close to reflecting the number of hours you put into the job and into the work, that's a pretty tough pill to swallow. And it's okay for a single guy because he can kind of slough it off, but for a guy with a family, that's a hell of a thing. And yet, sometimes there are no better jobs available in the area where you live, and you just got to suck it up until something better comes along. That's a pretty tough pill to swallow. Something else that's very difficult about being a truck driver is the fact that your trucking company may have customers who have warehouses in really crappy areas, in really unsafe areas. And that's a real problem, because the dispatcher is safe in his office and he doesn't care if you're going into a slum to pick up or deliver, especially at night. And man, that can be some scary stuff, some of the places they try to send you. And all I can tell you is once you figure out where you're going, it doesn't look smart to you, go in the daylight. And I don't care what excuse you make up, but it's not worth your life. Very difficult part of the trucking job. Back to money again. Another difficult part of the job is translating your pay statement. Now, most truck drivers aren't Philadelphia accountants, and truck companies tend to make your pay statements deliberately confusing. So the average guy can't translate how much he's been paid for what he's done. And they do that on purpose, as I said. So it's tough to translate it and check it to make sure you got paid for everything you did. And trucking companies oftentimes count on the fact that you can't check it or you won't check it or you give up trying to check it and just accept the paycheck and go, oh, that sounds about right. And I've had lots of friends that have done that, and they've lost tens of thousands of dollars over the years of their career, just unnecessarily because the trucking companies would make the pay statements too difficult to read. And that's crap, but it happens all the time. Another tricky issue is deciding when the truck and trailer is safe to go and when it's not. All sorts of guys get into conflicts with their trucking companies. Of course, the trucking companies are going to say, oh yeah, your truck's good, you're going to go. But you're doing a circle check every morning and you find something that's questionable, but you're not a mechanic, but it doesn't look good to you, and you want to consult a mechanic, but the company says, oh, you got to go, it's fine, and you know, there can be real conflict there, because at the end of the day, you're the guy that's going to get the ticket. Or at the end of the day, you're the guy that's going to lose the brakes and smash into traffic and end up in jail. It's not the dispatcher, it's not the fleet manager, it's nobody else but you. So it's on you, and you alone, to make sure the equipment is safe. If they're kicking you out of the yard with a load, be 100% sure, or you're going to roll into the scale and ask them for their opinion on that, and ask them what's going to happen then when you do that. And a lot of them will say, well, we'll fire you. But, you know, if that's their attitude, if they don't want to give you a safe trailer or truck, you're better off not working there anyway. But it's a hell of a decision, and I have to go back and forth every once in a while with a company over whether their equipment's safe or not. But ultimately, it's your butt on the line. So another difficult challenge of driving a truck is they will send you to customers and shippers and receivers and on deliveries where you get there and the dock is big enough for a UPS van and not big enough for you and your 53-footer. And this happens a lot. And you go inside and you say, you know, there's no way I'm going to get this thing in this little hole. And they say, oh, we get trucks in here all the time. And if I had $1 for every time I've heard that, I'd be a rich, rich man. But shippers and receivers, A, they don't want to admit that the dock's not right, or B, can't tell a UPS van from a 53-footer, or whatever their issue is. But that's a common problem in the trucking industry. Truck drivers hear that and face it all the time, and you just got to stand your ground. Because if you wreck the trailer or fold up the bunk extenders or something trying to jam into this crap hole, guess who's at fault? You're at fault. So the best thing to do is stand your ground and go, nope, I'll take it somewhere else where I can fit in, or you can bring your fork truck out and I'll pallet jack it to the back of the trailer or whatever. But I'm not wrecking my truck for your skids. Simple as that, but you got to stand your ground, because otherwise, one more time, you'll get the blame if something goes wrong. Something else that's tough, and not so much for the guys down south, but particularly up here in Canada, or if you run up in the northern states, is having a breakdown in the middle of winter, in the middle of nowhere. And you can damn near freeze to death waiting for help to come. And, you know, the company, sometimes they care, and sometimes they're just, you know, well, we'll get to you when we get to you. And in the meantime, if the truck's not running and you've got no heat on and it's got no Webasto or anything, that can be a real fun challenge. I remember one time years and years ago breaking down in this old Freightliner cab over company truck, and the thing just quit. And I was rolled up in the curtain. I took down the curtain off the sleeper and rolled up in the curtain as a blanket, just trying to stay warm until the damn tow truck got there. And I was just about frozen. The tow truck guy showed up. He worked on the truck, hooked it up, and I sat in the cab of his truck and just did this for about an hour and a half until I warmed up. And you know what they paid me for that? Absolutely nothing. So there's a really tough part of the job. There's another reason to make sure your equipment is top-notch, or the equipment they're giving you is top-notch, because you don't want to go through that too often. That was pretty unpleasant. Finally, one of the toughest things drivers have to face is deciding when to go and when not to go. You wake up in the morning, you're in the truck stop, you're supposed to be on a schedule, you look out the windshield and you can't see the parking lot across from you because it's snowing so heavy, or the fog's so thick, or it's glare ice on the parking lot and guys are just falling down left, right, and center trying to go in to get a coffee. And The dispatcher's just whipping you because you got to go, you got an appointment, they can't get you in for another 2 weeks or whatever. You know, they always come up with some story. And you've got to decide whether it's safe to go or whether it's not, and whether you're better just to anchor the thing and ride out the storm or whatever you're in. And nobody, I mean nobody, can drive in freezing rain. It's as simple as that. And the dispatcher doesn't know freezing rain from squat. So don't even listen to him when it comes to freezing rain or something like that. The call is yours. And if the ice is hanging off the mirror arms, crawl on your hands and knees into the truck stop so you don't wipe out and break your back, and have a coffee and ride it out. And yes, it's tough to argue with some of these dispatchers about when to go and when not to go. But that's the beauty of these new satellite e-logs and stuff like that. You just type in road glare ice, not safe to go. And if the dispatcher is dumb enough to send you back a reply saying, oh, you're fine, go anyway, you just show that to the nearest DOT guy or the insurance company or the general manager or the safety guy or whoever you want. That dispatcher will get his butt kicked all over the parking lot. It's your call. It's your life. And they're counting on you. The owner is counting on you not to smash up his equipment and lose his freight and his contract. It's your call. But mostly it's your safety. Above all that, that's counting on that. You've got to make the right judgment call, and I don't care if that means arguing with every idiot all the way up the line at the trucking company. Stand your ground, stay safe, and go when you're comfortable, when you're rested, when the roads are in the condition that you feel you can handle it safely, not when the traffic's sliding all over the interstate sideways. The onus one more time is on you, and that's a tough part of being a trucker. You've got all these decision calls to make. You're not getting paid for making them. You should be, but you're not. But ultimately, if you make the wrong decision, you're the guy in trouble. Bear that in mind. Trucking is a difficult job. You guys. The truck in this picture belonged to a friend of mine, the red one here. That's mine in the background. And then I took this many years ago. And the deal was with this guy that he was an independent for years, and then the Canadians will recognize the Forbes Hewlett logo on the door. Mike had gone to Forbes Hewlett because he was having trouble finding his own freight after his contract ended. Mike Davison was his name. Chinaman was his handle. That truck was a 4 1/4 cat. It had started out as a 265 wheelbase. He stretched it to over 300 inches in wheelbase, and that was really the first long truck that came out of Ontario here, and it was something to see. The first time I saw it after he stretched it was the tractor went by as I was driving, and then a minute later the trailer showed up and the trailer went by, and I was just awestruck at how long the thing was. Had a 6 1/4 Spicer in it. It would run to the moon. Gorgeous truck. Mike did all the work on it himself, and boy, he was a long hauler, boy. He was a big strapper back then. But he and I took a load of meat one time. We ran team as far as Wyoming with this load of meat, and I got to drive this truck a little bit. I was not nearly as smooth on the 6 4 trannies as Mike was. Every time I screwed up a shift or did something he didn't like, he'd reach over and belt me one because he didn't like the abuse on his transmission. But it was quite the truck. It was, kind of a rough old girl by the time he retired it, but that was one of the original large cars out of Ontario. You guys stay safe, take care, keep the rubber side down. I'm pulling for you. We'll see you on the backhaul.